To introduce myself, my name is Ryan Hamblin. I am an instructor here at Lambda School. You don't know me because I work a lot more during the day. I don't teach very often anymore either. I do a lot more of other administrative tasks. Yeah, I work with Dan and chat with Dan on a daily basis, and he talks about how amazing his after hours program is. And Dan had to fill in for another instructor, so I am taking the opportunity to fill in for Dan tonight and lend a hand here in the after hours. It's always a privilege for me to get to teach. I love teaching, and it's a privilege for me to be here with you all. So yeah, this is really exciting, but we're just going to go ahead and dive right in and start the day off, or the night, I guess, with any common things that are just treating you terribly with React. We want to solve some of those, kind of start off with a good 15-20 minute refresher review, what have you. So go ahead and post your questions in the questions and answers thread, while I also craft a poll for you to kind of see where the class is at in just a second. So yeah, go ahead and craft your questions in that questions and answers thread. All right, poll is live. I just want you to answer that really quick, just to see where we're all at in terms of the training kit material. Seems like you're all groovy up to this point. Jason Cook asks a really good sort of theoretical question that I'm going to do my best to answer. He says, what is the deal with unidirectional state? What is the functional purpose of its design? So I'm not going to pretend like I was there in the early stages of React around that table that was discussing the implementation details and features of the language or the library. But I have some opinions on unidirectional data flow. I think it's one thing to keep. So if you think about the way that data flows, or that DOM elements are created in a DOM tree, you have parent and child and grandchild and great-grandchild elements that all sort of, and sibling elements that all sort of make up this HTML structure, right? And what you give to the DOM through HTML is actually not those elements themselves. It's kind of just this giant object of items, right? And they have these places called nodes, and then that node contains some sort of information. That information being, some default styles, some attributes of class names, information that is pertinent to the semantic element or the DOM element that you're trying to render the screen. So if you think about browsers in general, front-end applications in general, front-end websites or what have you, that is sort of how just the DOM is built already. Building something like unidirectional data flow into the library itself, where a parent sends data down to the child, down to the grandchild, and so on and so forth, it does cause a few headaches that are solvable with state management libraries like Redux or MobX, and those solutions actually tend to cause a little bit of drama because there's some overhead to learning, Redux or Flux or whatever you're going to use instead of that pattern. But we've spent a lot of time in the React ecosystem trying to get away from this idea that data needs to flow downward. And then events flow upward, right? Usually you have like the handlers that you're passing down from, parent to child to grandchild, that you invoke on a child element or a grandchild element, but it's actually written and declared on the parent element. So you just have to buy in. Now, is it the best solution? I don't know. I like it. I like React for a lot of things. I've used React for, professionally for a lot of really cool things. But yeah, I can only muse with you. I can only, sort of guess as to why they built it in, but my assumptions are, let's think about what we're actually building here, and it's a giant tree object, and let's see how that works and try and mimic that in our own little library, so to speak, where data kind of flows downward and then events bubble up. So I don't know. It's a good question. Hopefully you're less confused than when you asked. It doesn't look like we have a ton of questions. It looks like you are all just ready to charge ahead smoothly, which I think is fine. I think that's totally great. So we're going to spend the next 15 or 20 minutes or so talking about a tool called Create React App. And then we're just going to do a little follow-along exercise to get you in tune with this tool, because that's what today is all about, right, is React tooling. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will jump right in. Okay, so I just Googled Create React App. The first item that comes up is the repository on GitHub itself. So Create React App, the reason that it was created, who knows why? You can think about that for a second. Why did they create React App? What problems does it try and solve? Okay, rapid deployment, that's definitely a great solution or a great problem to try and solve. Setting up your React files quickly and efficiently, yeah. Repetitive file structure, because creating even a simple hello world in React is seen as so much more complicated than using other things. It helps people new to React get off the ground quicker. That looks like, that feels super textbook and perfect. Saves us some headaches, diminishes user error, setting dependencies quickly, the hassle of setting up development environment, JavaScript fatigue. Wow, you are all prepared, so this is good. So yeah, Create React App is really that. We used to dive into React, and it was like we have this React package, and then you had to port in React DOM, and then you had to use Webpack and learn all about these things just to get the simple hello world off the ground, just to get running. You had to use, before Webpack was like browserify, but like React really made Webpack shine, and then you had to configure your Babel plugins. Babel is, futuristic JavaScript, or JavaScript that doesn't necessarily exist in the standard yet, but we can use all of those futuristic, items in JavaScript by using Babel. And so things like JSX are supported with Babel. Things like a lot of the class syntax, even though that's now supported commonly as a standard, wasn't back in the day. So we used to write React apps and use that class syntax, and you weren't able to run that anywhere without those types of things. With Create React App, it's just a one and done install. So it's really important to understand that it takes away a lot of that fatigue from you. You don't have to learn Webpack today as a React developer, as a learner, to dive right into the core concepts of React that we want you to know. Now, does that mean you shouldn't learn Webpack later on your own? No, you should definitely take a gander at that at some point. Just add that to your list of never-ending things that you should learn about. But yeah, it's one of those things that you don't have to, because the Facebook team went and said, hey, we're going to standardize this, and we're going to say that anyone using React can just one and done use an install, and we're going to maintain it for them. They're not going to have to maintain their Babel versions, their React versions anymore. their plugins and things like that. We're just going to take care of all that for them. So that's the great advantage of this. Create React App takes advantage of a tool that comes with modern NPM called NPX. And even built into Facebook's Yarn, you can just use Yarn nowadays. So we're going to use NPX because I did it earlier on my machine and it worked. Those are every teacher's famous last words before they dive into a demo. But we're going to use NPX and we're going to create a little application together, just kind of going through the ins and outs, and we're going to play around with things. Cool. I like to think of Babel as the Babel fish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Nice. Yeah, there you go. That's I think that if I were to ever name a tool like a JavaScript package or library, I would dig deep into my lore of something. I don't know what lores I have. So yeah. So at the time that we sort of released this content, Create React App 2 had recently come out. It was funny because Dustin and I were like talking about this, and then we're like, oh, I wonder if that's going to affect teaching that next Monday to a class in the full-time program. And I was like, oh, we should look into that. And we went and we both installed, and we both had like mega errors, and we're like, crap, we need to fix our stuff. So if you ever run through this documentation here, you'll see some of the common errors that we've ran into and ways to fix them. So you'll get either a yarn start or a non-compatible version of Node error, which you can use this really cool thing called NVM to manage your software, manage your node, okay? But we're just going to run through and do a quick install. So you can do this with me. Let me cancel that. And let's make an app, and we're going to call it Animals. So I'm going to say npx create react app animals, and you should do the same. Now this is going to take, oh, I already have one called Animals. I'm going to call it Animals 2. There we go. So this is going to take depending download lengths. So we'll give everyone a good moment of time. You can go grab yourself a drink of water once you run the command. I'm running on decent hardware and decent internet, so I might be sort of quicker than others, but slower than others as well. Ashley asks a very good question. Do you need to have Create React App installed already? The answer to that is no, you don't need that anymore. You can simply run yarn or npx create react app, and what that does, and this is kind of a cool little snippet there, is that actually will go and install a binary file on your machine really quick, and then it'll go and execute that file. And that file will notice to pull in all the dependencies that you need, and then once your install is done, it does a cleanup where it removes any of those binaries that you don't want left on your machine. So npx, and then even this yarn version, allow you to use the benefits of Create React App without having to install it on your machine. So if you're worried about hard drive space or bandwidth or anything like that, you don't have to install Create React App anymore. You can just use yarn or npx and you'll be good to go. If you already did it, can we remove it so we can just use npx? Yes. I have done that on this machine. I no longer have the Create React App command. Oh, actually I do. I've actually reinstalled it. So at one point I went and reinstalled it. But yeah, normally I don't have it installed on my machine. So I thought I had it installed or uninstalled. So. But yes, you can go and find documentation on uninstalls. Let me zoom out back to 0. Uninstall. No. There's got to be a command out there that lets you just uninstall really fast the CLI. So you no longer need it on your machine anymore. So the global one can slow the computer. Yeah, it can. It's software. And you're installing it on your machine, on your hard drive. It's taking up space. So Yeah, they never let you leave. Once you install Create React App, you always have it. What is best to use, Yarn or NPX? I don't have an answer for that. I'm so sorry, Mustafa. I just used NPX. You can try and use Yarn. They both achieve the same thing. So Yarn, who knows what Yarn is, by the way? No idea. What is this Yarn thing? Yeah, it's a package manager. Yep, Jason's got it. Okay, so normally we used to use this thing called Bower. Bower went away. Bower was a way that JavaScript developers were able to go out on the World Wide Web and find software that other developers had built to use that software to build software. So, surprise, software developers don't write all their own software, even for the most advanced technical user out there. Most solutions are found by using other people's code. It's why we're able to get stuff done so quickly these days. Now, NPM came in a few years ago and was just where all this software lived, which is the Node Package Manager Registry. And if you go to npm.org, you'll see a list of all the tens of thousands of software packages that we can use to write software. So there were problems with distributing that. Let's say you worked in a dispersed team and somebody was running a version of a piece of software that you weren't running, and that version wasn't synced up in your package.json file. And that version of software conflicts with some of the other versions of software that you're using, and you go and install it, and then all of a sudden the app that works on one developer's machine is broken on your machine. That is what Yarn tries to solve, or that is one of the issues that Yarn tries to solve. And by doing so, Yarn allows you to sync up with what's called the Yarn lock file, which will say, oh, any of the out-of-date dependencies we're going to sort of map against this lock file. So what they essentially are tools that you install on your machine that allow you to build a project, and when you need a piece of software, all you have to do is type a command, and it goes up to the World Wide Web, and it says npm registry. Do you have this package? I want it in my system. And the npm registry gives you all of the Node modules and installs them on your local machine so you can use them to build software. And that's how we just do things today. So npm and Yarn sort of kind of compete. We like to use Yarn here at Lambda School because we use a lot of React, and it's commonly seen in the React ecosystem. And the React team uses Yarn for everything they do. So if we're using Yarn and React, it makes it a lot easier. When you get to Node.js with Deandra, you're going to learn a little bit more about NPM and the differences. But they sort of compete today. Anytime that there's better features of Yarn, NPM tries to surpass that or catch up, and then they surpass, and then they just kind of piggyback off of each other. Using one over the other, it doesn't matter. When you're in React, use Yarn though. So, and then Andrew says, NPX threw an error for me, so I used Yarn. Yeah, all I can do is shrug to that, so I'm sorry. I don't know why one would work over the other. Okay, Arpita asked, and I think repeated a question. So for every project we have to, do we just use npx create React app? Yes. So for every project that you're going to be using here forward, so any new project that you start, you just have to install the things that you need using npx or Yarn. So for your project that you will begin today and tomorrow, the React Instaclone project, all you're going to do is you're going to install use Create React App to make a project once, and you don't need to do it again. So it's once per project that you build. So. Jason said, I've been meaning to search for this, but can you add third-party registries to Node and NPM? Are there such things? There doesn't seem to be a need for such things, but I've been curious. You can definitely, well, I don't know. I've never had the need for them, so I don't know. So Taylor, you don't need to clone first. For tonight, and we'll go over that. You shouldn't need to clone anything because Create React App is installable through the command line. So you don't need to actually clone this repository at all. All you need to do is just run that command that we ran and get a project up and running. Cool? So good questions. I'm going to answer like 2 more questions and then we're going to move on. So if we're working on a community project, does everyone have to create the project? Or just one and everyone else forks? Just wondering. Yeah, normally just one person creates your project and then they put it up on GitHub and then everyone uses GitHub to sync up changes that are done to that project. How do you get it to GitHub so PMs can see it? There'll be instructions tonight for your Instagram clone. Taylor, you don't need to put what we're doing up on GitHub at all if you don't want to. If you want to, you know, you can do that by just going to GitHub and saying clicking new repository and cloning that and then pushing it to it. I think the inquiry has to do with what do we need to do with the finished output of this little tutorial. The finished output of what? The InstaClone? Yeah, so there'll be instructions in the README on what to do there. So you'll actually clone the InstaClone tutorial. You'll actually clone it, fork it, clone it like you normally do. And then you'll actually install a React app within that project. So, cool. No problem. Don't be sorry for asking questions. Okay, let's forge ahead. What we just did is we actually created a folder on our root called animals. Let me just go ahead and delete that. And then if I run ls, oh, wow, there you go. So if I run ls, you'll see that on my machine, I have something called animals2, and then I've done this tutorial before because I have animals1 there. So animals2 is the React application that we just built, that we just used Yarn to build. So let's go ahead and I'm going to clear it. To clear your console, it's Control or Command K, or you can just type in clear. Makes you feel really cool. Clear computer. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just say, I'm going to cd into animals 2, because that's the one that we want. And I'm going to open that up. I'm going to open it up using VS Code. If you don't have that code command installed, do it now. Saves you some time. So the way that you install the code command, Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P will bring up your little palette here. Just type in code and look at that shell command install code command and path, and it allows you to open up whatever directory you want, whatever file you want, right there in VS Code. It's really nifty, okay? So we have only done one thing with this project, and that's use Create React App to create it. So we need to take a look and see what's given to us. Here's that yarn lock file that I was talking about. This is one of the benefits to using modern NPM and Yarn, is that you have syncable, like you can sync your changes properly. We're not going to Yarn install yet. Hold on. What if you forgot to name the created project? I think it'll ask you to name it. I'm not sure though. I don't know what it'd be called. I'm not sure. So the package JSON is really what it's like our map to tell NPM the things that we need. And these are the things that we need. This is our list of dependencies: React, React DOM, and React scripts. This is what runs create React app. Your React applications are those 3 dependencies right there. Anything else you need is extraneous to the React ecosystem. You'll have to pull that in manually. And then you'll see that we have the node modules where all of the dependencies, those node packages, those pieces of software got installed, okay? So this, basically, once we ran that, we did all of this with that one command. Now, a really good question came in, did this actually give us a Git repository? The answer to that is no. And how I could find that out is if I just wanted to say Git status, you could see nothing to commit once I'm in animals tree. That should have said not a Git repository. So it should not have initialized a Git repository with a Git history, but I might have some weird unsynced stuff going on. Okay. But yeah, so it should not have done that. You'll have to like initialize that later. To reinitialize. So I guess it came with something, but I don't know why it came with something. Normally it doesn't. So yeah. We also get this public directory, which is essentially just our index.html. Notice that we have our div with the ID of root. That is where your React application is going to live. Other important things to look at are like the index.js file. Notice what we're targeting when we're selecting the document. We're finding the element by ID of root. So we're going to inject and render our app into our target element, which is found right here in this index.html file. Okay? Other things to note, of course, that come right out of the box, you have a test file. You're going to be learning a little bit about testing when you advance through the course. You also have a CSS file, which out of the box, this is just supported. You're writing all of these React components, and you can just write your CSS right in this file and link it right up and do things like import that CSS file. That's pretty unreal. That's actually a really big configuration, but it's done for you right out of the box with Create React App. And then you can see that you have like this weird service worker thing. I never use these because I've never written apps at Lambda School, I've never had to write apps that deal with any service workers. You can actually just go ahead and delete that. Just move it right to trash. And then go right here where you're using it and delete on line 5 in index.js as well. And then, of course, you're going to get that error on line 11. So service workers are a really good way to cache information about your application. So you can cache basically your whole UI in the browser. Allows you to work with things offline. I just recommend deleting it because we're not going to touch service workers at Lambda School. So as not to confuse you, if you ever boilerplate or use Create React App to build an application, it's just extra stuff that you don't need. But they're a really, really cool thing and worthwhile looking into. Oh, thanks for the tip, Edward. Yeah, there's probably some weird remote linked up. Okay, so this is kind of a tour of what is given to you out of the gate when you install a Create React app. Other things that I would prefer you do, go and just delete all of this from the README and add your own title, right? Whatever the app is, and then maybe some short description. We'll be working with animals. Some short description about what the application is. Every single time I get like a submission from a student and they have like the default Create React App README, I just think, oh, that's lazy. You know, go ahead and just make sure you can tell me what it is you're working on, because that didn't give me enough information. It just gave me too much information that I don't need. Cool? All right, so let's move along. Let's chug right forward. We have a React application ready to go. Let's see what it looks like. How do we start our React application? Yarn start. or as Luis likes to call it, Jarn. It's got a really awesome accent. Jarn start. And notice that we're building a little dev server. This is what React Scripts is doing. And we're putting this up, and we're able to work with this in our little React environment. By the way, Create React App 2.0, the styling, the loading GIF, man, makes it so much nicer. Used to be this weird like gray bar. I don't know. Now it just is great. Cool. So yeah, we are off the ground running. You have a React application. So some of this is new to you, but most of it's not. You've already been doing this. You've already been working with apps that have been built with Create React Apps since you began React. Okay. So if we head over to Training Kit, there's actually a really cool exercise for you to follow along with me. You've already done most of it already. But we are going to take this animals file, which I'm going to pull off of this code sandbox, and I'm going to give to you. And we're going to make a little app just for a little refresher. Okay? So go ahead, and this will only take us a minute or two just to play around with it. And you guys are actually going to help me create this app. So there's your file. It's a bunch of animals. You filthy animal. We could name the movie. We're going to create a new file inside of our animals project. And we're going to name that animals data.js. We're going to copy and paste that data inside of that file. Notice it's just an array of objects. Two-toed sloth. Common genet. Nice. These are great. There's a capybara in here somewhere. Fat-tailed Dunart. Nice. We're exporting that data out of our file. So basically, this export syntax is just saying, hey, whatever this variable is here, whatever belongs to that variable, can you just expose that to the rest of this application so that the rest of this application can refer to it whenever they want to? Okay. Now, let's go into our app.js and let's import those animals. From animals data. Hey. Just make sure we have those ready to go by console logging. And if we open up our console, we should see our lovely fat-tailed Dunart, our fox, our crab-eating fox. I love how there's a freaking qualifier for this fox. This fox is a crab-eating fox. Wow, that's amazing. Now we're going back into our project. Let's delete that console log, and let's consume that data. I don't want any more of this. Actually, we'll keep the header. It'll make things look pretty. Get rid of that. And what do we need to do to create DOM elements from a list of items? How do we do that in React? Walk me through this. Teach me React. What is this HTML looking stuff? Ah, it's JSX. Cool. Why is JSX special? It allows for inline JavaScript. Oh, so you're telling me I can put JavaScript inside of this stuff? Cool. So let's map over our data So here's what's cool. Some of you may not be realizing this, but with JSX, I can literally just give this an array of innumerable elements. Element 1. I can give it another element. And then React just knows what to do with this. Okay? Element 1, element 2. So when you're mapping over data and turning it into DOM elements, we're literally giving React an array of this JSX. Okay? Maybe you knew that. Maybe you're just like, Ryan, we're smarter than that. Maybe not. Maybe this is like brand new or newsflash. But either way, when we say animals.map, what does map return? Map's a function. It returns something. What does it do? What does it return? Returns an array. And so it takes that callback. We have information, right, at each index of that array, information on the array, which is items found at whatever index. So in our case, we just have a single animal, right? And you're just going to say, hey, give me a div, print the animal.species and the animal.name. And then I also need to be worried about the key. Who remembers why that key is important? I don't remember what that's called. Maybe it's ID. ID, name, species, boom. Why is the key important? Yes, to allow React to monitor the change in the state in DOM. Ashley, at this point, your animals file should look like this. You should literally just copy and paste the code snippet above into it. And then there's an export at the bottom. So I just went and sent that in Slack, just like a few lines above where you asked that question. So hopefully you can get caught up quicker, and then I'll post a copy of this when I send you on break so that you can play around with it. Yeah, so React is going to literally iterate over that list of DOM elements, and it's not going to know how many DOM elements to be concerned with and whatnot. So it keeps track of changes by that unique key. So you need to give it a unique key that associates the data. So yeah, you all, those who answered that question, great job. Okay, let's go back to our app. Notice that like I'm just saving files here. I don't have to go back to my browser and refresh. It just gives me my information at will. I can't describe to you the power that's behind that. Forever, throughout my entire life as a developer, I always had to go save, refresh, save, refresh. I always felt like I was building art, but with like a hammer and chisel, but I was trying to paint something. So now, it's like I have an instant like paintbrush on the canvas, and I just have to save my files, and it auto hot swaps them and auto reloads them for me. So, okay, so that was just a little refresher on like all of this stuff. You should have, I mean, you've been learning this stuff constantly the last couple of weeks, and it was just a little refresher on that. But the important things to go over here is I've been talking for about 39 minutes. We've actually physically been doing stuff for probably less than 10, which is amazing to be able to get a React application off the ground. Cool? So because I've been talking for so long, let's go ahead and let's take a quick breather. We'll take 7. I like 7, the lucky number. And we'll come back and we'll actually learn all about this cool other tool called PropTypes. Okay? Okay, we are winding down the tail end of our break. We're going to be moving into another subject. Let's talk a little bit about JavaScript at large. So JavaScript has a problem with it. The problem that I actually find a really good part about the language itself. And that problem, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen since I'm just looking at something that doesn't make sense about what I'm talking about. The problem with JavaScript is that the data that we pass around in JavaScript is assumed by the interpreter of the JavaScript engine. So there's a step when JavaScript compiles and does its thing, where JavaScript is saying, hey, that thing that the developer wrote should be this type of data. Okay? This isn't the same in a lot of strongly typed languages. So there's this difference, this dichotomy. Strong typed languages force you, the developer, to say that piece of data that I'm going to pass to this function is actually going to be a string type, or that piece of data is going to be a function type, or whatever. In JavaScript, that's just assumed by the engine. And it's actually really nice. You don't have to do anything, right? You just have to type JavaScript and it's valid. Let's see where that actually can cause a problem. So if I had a function, and I'm going to have to kind of go off the cuff here a little bit, but if I had a function that took in value 1 and value 2, and let's actually name this function so we can use it later. We'll just call it adder because it's our adder function. And if I said I want to add up and return value 1 plus value 2, there's a couple of assumptions that I have made here as the developer. I'm calling this function adder, so I'm assuming it's going to be performing some sort of mathematical idiom here. By the way, don't follow along with me. This is just me demoing something, okay? If I invoke adder with numbers, which is my assumption, I'm going to get the addition of the values, the arguments that I pass to that function. Okay, so this works with numbers. What if I'm just going to call it again. What if I called this with the string 1 and the number 2? What's going to happen? Well, I get the string representation of 1 string concatenated to and forced into a string the number 2. Let me bump my screen up a little bit. So once again, I'm a developer. I knew what I wanted out of this function. I knew that I was making an addition function that's going to add up 1 and 2, and it's going to give me the result of any 2 numbers that I pass to it. But what I didn't assume is that somebody is going to use this function in a way that I didn't, force them to use it. So we can actually go back and we can fix our adder function then to say if value 1 does not equal, let's say if type of, does not equal number, then return the string val1 needs to be a number. Okay? Awesome. So I fixed my function a little bit. But what happens then if I call adder and I pass it a string and then the number? We're going to get that error that says, hey, you used the function wrong, you dummy. So that's great. Let's go and fix that. And I'm doing this of course I'm doing this very step-by-step and very rudimentary for a very specific purpose, because I want it to be very clear to everyone the painstaking process of type checking. Okay? Adder, I've solved it for value 1, but I didn't solve the problem for value 2, so we still get the same boneheaded issue that we had before. We concatenated the string 2, coerced this to a string, we concatenated the number 2 to the string 2. We got a string value back, even though attr was supposed to be for numbers. So what would we have to do? Well, you've guessed it. Like, what we're going to have to do is go back and fix our function yet again. Just copy and paste that line and do it all over again, but for value 2 instead of value 1. Now we have a pretty verbose function, right? It's like anything that's not a number. So it's a lot more, it's verbose. It does exactly what we expect it to do. If I try to get away with it here or here, it's going to return first, right? And give us, and say, hey, you're wrong. You need to use this function properly. So this is an inherent problem. Like, what if I had tried to pass an object to this function? I would try and concatenate an object to a string. They're going to get the string interpretation of an object, and who knows what that looks like. It looks a lot like this. It's like object. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. Once you see that, you'll know what I'm talking about. But that's sort of the string interpretation of an object, okay? So this is the problem. Now, we're building big applications today, okay? We're no longer just building websites. So React understood that. And it's been very popular as of recent for supersets of JavaScript to sort of come about and force what we call strongly typed definitions onto our data that we're passing around willy-nilly. Things like TypeScript and Flow, even things like ClojureScript, I believe, or CoffeeScript support in like typing, okay? Strong typing. Meaning at the time that you write the code, you have to tell the JavaScript interpreter what your code should be, okay? And this is only a problem at scale. This is only a problem when you're working, in a big application, which a lot of you are going to be working in, especially during your project weeks and during Lambda Labs and things like that. You're going to be working on big software, big problems. And you're going to be needing to use a way to type or tell the interpreter what you want your data to be. So that way, if anything breaks down, you get a warning first before it goes out live, right? You expected this data to be a string, but you gave it a type of number. All right. So the way that we solve this in the React ecosystem is with a package called PropTypes. I'll share my screen again. PropTypes used to be a part of the React API. It used to be built in. But notice this little disclaimer when you go to the PropTypes library. And that is, oh, there you are. PropTypes to the rescue, exactly. Okay, and I saw a couple of comments came through, but you're all correct. Joshua, we could coerce everything to a number. That's one way we could have fixed the problem. But have you ever tried to coerce an object to a number? What if the user gave you an object, right? So that's one of those things. So PropTypes actually solves this problem for us in React applications. It used to come with React, but now it's its own library. So if you look, it is found on the NPM registry. It is an NPM package now, its very own, and it's maintained by the wonderful folks at Facebook. So you can go ahead and look at it there. But you can see very quickly what this does for us. On this little trivial function, this little trivial class component, we are using the string, hello, this.props.name. We're expecting that name is a string. All right, so we're going to say, expect that greeting components, prop types, name are set equal to a string. It's very straightforward. There are values for virtually every type in JavaScript. Even though array is an object type, you can check to see if it's a specific type of object, which is an array. You can check for Boolean, function, number, object, string, or symbol. Okay? Symbol is newer in ES6. It's pretty cool. There's also extenders like element and node. Not very commonly used. You won't need them for what you build here at Lambda School. Don't worry too much about them. You can look at enumerable types. Prop types could be one of, hey, this is one of these two things. You can look at one of type, where maybe you expect your elements to be receiving a prop that could be a string or a number or a instance of another object. Okay. Some of my favorites are array of, because we work with giant arrays in JavaScript, especially when we're communicating with servers that have data for us. We request that data and we get it back in the form of arrays with objects. So that's one that you can look at and use in tonight's and tomorrow's project. Array of numbers or objects in our case. Then my absolute favorite prop type is called shape. Shape allows you to say, basically, I'm assuming that everything here that we're passing down is going to be an object, but that's going to have an object with these 5 fields on it, or these 3 fields on it. And those fields are going to be a color whose type is string, a font size whose type is number. So it's a really, really good way to ensure that the data you're passing around actually gets checked. And why are we doing this? Why would we want to check the data that we're passing around? Think about that for just a second. Why would we want to check the data that we're passing around in our applications? What benefits does it give us? Sure, SQL injection attacks. One thing, so there's this really popular style of JavaScript attack called a CSRF, basically, or an XHR attack or whatever. Basically, you can just, in an input field, if nobody's protecting themselves against this, you can basically send a script, so open caret, script, close caret, some JavaScript, and then you can paste that into an input field and save it on a database. And if that script contains any like terrible stuff, you could basically turn somebody's website like a different color or blink the background or something. So you can inject JavaScript. React actually sanitizes all inputs, so you're built in. Like you building React apps, you're protected against that type of attack. So yeah, sure, SQL injection attacks, why not? A better user experience. Yeah, Thomas, absolutely. A better user experience for who? I would argue it's a better user experience for the developer. Us, we're users, right? We're users of software and tools to build software, right? We're building software for users, but we are a user that has an experience that we demand our experience to be a certain way. So it's definitely a better user experience for us. James says, I don't want my sweet React app to break from horrible users. Yeah, or other developers. And then Tiff said, so easy. Jamar says, showcase a warning to protect a dev from their mistakes. That's actually the biggest benefit to using type systems like TypeScript or Flow. It's you protect yourself from yourself. You get warnings before your code goes live. Yeah, and Jason said hit it right on the head. React's warnings are very explicit, but they're about to get even better with the data that we pass around. Okay, and your goal for React InstaClone tonight and tomorrow, while you work on the first portion of it, the first portion of the project is going to be set up so that you work on day 1 as over the next couple of days. So we need to go fix that naming there. But yeah, the first portion of the project is going to be day 1. And day 1 just makes you use Create React App, get your data flowing in your application, and use prop types to check it. So you're not really building a ton of stuff, but it allows you to really use these tools that we're talking about tonight. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's actually learn, now that we know why we're going to do this, we're actually going to go right back into our project. And we're going to just type check this data And maybe not. Maybe I give you a better data set. See what we have. Why don't you just watch me do this with animals, and then we'll work together to do it together in just a minute. That's what we're going to do. So watch me, and then we're going to do it together, and then you're going to do it on your own as you dive into the project this evening, okay? So I have pulled in a bunch of data here, and I'm going to abstract this out. So this is not fingers on keyboards time, okay? This is watch Ryan. And I'm just going to pass my animal down. That animal is going to be set equal to animal. I'm going to make sure I declare and import animal. Okay? Let's go ahead and create a new file, or I'm going to go ahead and create a new file called animal.js. I am going to, animal. And what I want is, instead of returning this is going to be on the other one. But this is going to be props dot. And this is all getting all screwy down here, so let me fix that. You're like, is that valid? And I would say, no, it's not. Okay, and then this is like, you need Reacts. Cool. Yep, that's a snippet extension. Today you learned more tools, right? This is all about React tooling. Snippets, Reacts. Just search for the snippets, and I use one called Simple React Snippets. They're a dime a dozen today. But you have things like IMR, which is import React and component, import prop types. We're going to be using that. CC class component, CCC class component with constructor, SFC stateless functional component. It's brilliant. There's no reason you shouldn't have that after I just explained why. Okay? But now we can go back into here, and we should still be good to go. Let me pull up the React localhost 3000, and we're back to square one. The only difference is I have a warning that I need to go fix, but also the only difference is that React is generating a bunch of my elements, right? Let's go fix that warning, because I hate warnings. And we need to do that here on this element and say that each key is going to be unique to the element. But effectively what we just achieved is we imported some animals from an array of objects, and then we gave them to a component. And as a developer, we're just expecting that this component knows that these are strings or whatever they're supposed to be. So we need to prevent ourselves from ourselves. Because what if in one instance this was an object or something? Let's go figure out what happens to our React app if we're not protected from ourselves. Let's go into animal data. And let's change this to an array. That actually might work. Let's see if it does. Kind of bugged that works. Silly React. Let's just say that it's an object in this case. Okay. Parsing error, unexpected token. You are trying to print an object, right? But this is just saying it's a parsing error. We have an unexpected token. It's not really telling us what failed. It's just saying you have an unexpected token. If we dug a little further, it would take us to the file, and then we would be smart enough to debug and say, oh yeah, that shouldn't be the case. But prop types is the way that we're going to protect ourselves from that type of behavior. I'm gonna forge ahead real quick, and then I'll answer questions in just 1 minute. So thank you for being so responsive and inquisitive. Did I just quit? Didn't mean to do that. I meant to do that. CD animals 2. And then CD animals 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to yarn add prop types. This is important. There are 3 naming conventions that you're going to have to memorize tonight for the use of prop types. Okay? So, when you install the package, it's prop hyphen types, which is known as, I believe, kebab case, like shish kebab. It might be snake case. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. One or the other. Snake, I think, is underscores. Yeah, I think it's kebab case. Okay? So now that we have installed it, we can actually go look and see our package JSON. Whoops, I don't want to do that. I'm going to look in here. We can go check in our package JSON and see that our little thing, it should be in here. Yarn add prop types. Oh, here. NVM. 1 second. Let me get a better version of Node going. NVM list. Okay, NVM use. Crazy it let me use the yarn start, but like it's freaking out on me. I need to just upgrade to 10.7, but there was a problem I had, so. Okay, now that we have it installed, you can see that it was added to my list of dependencies. This is actually more proper in like the dev dependencies, but we're not going to get into that right now. Okay, but it went and installed the node modules for me. Now I can use it. So inside of animal, I can import Pascal case prop types from, and that's important, prop types. So I'm just naming it prop types. And the one thing that's really cool about prop types is it comes with all of those functions, all of those methods to check my data. So I can just say the data that I'm giving this component is going to be equal to this thing or this thing or this thing, right? It's a very declarative way of just check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? So the way that we use this is we actually use animal, and we use what's called camel case prop types, because that's an actual thing on the React class or the React object, okay? And set that equal to whatever we want to use as. Okay? In our case, well, you set it equal to an object every time. But now we're going to say that every single one of these properties that we care about, animal or name and species, we're going to check the shape of this object animal that we're giving to our animal component. Okay? So before I do that, I'm going to answer any questions that came on. Looks like it was just a lot of fanboying on the packages, so awesome. Glad I simplified your life. But Taylor asked a good question. So I see us doing main app, functional component, presentational component pretty often. Is that just for practice purposes, or is it typically how real-world apps are made? That is definitely how real-world apps are made. You're going to be working in, files, and most of the time, your app is sort of like the home base of your component. It's sort of the conductor of all of your other, class components that you're going to be building. And then class components will be used to sort of store data about their children. So app would be where you perform some of the higher level logic and API calls and things, and you give that information to your others. But yeah, this pattern, you're going to see this pattern often where it's like, oh yeah, In fact, this doesn't even need to be a class component. There's no state here. If we were to set animals on state, we would use like component did mount or whatever. We'd set those animals up on state, and then we would use the state and be able to manipulate the state, which is what you're going to do with the Instagram clone data that you're going to be working with starting tonight, tomorrow. Cool. So yeah, you'll see this pattern everywhere. It's very common. A lot of times children components are simply functional components because they don't need to worry about where the data comes from. They need to worry about taking that data in and printing it on the DOM. So very, very good question, Taylor. You'll see it often. Okay, so this is where the funness comes in. This is where things start to get real. We're going to go prop types. Sorry, hold on. We got to declare the prop that we want to check. What is the prop that we care about? For this component, what is the prop that we're giving it that we care about? Animal, right? So we're going to say animal. And what prop type, what is the type of data? What type is animal? We're going to use shape, but shape indicates that what? It's an object. Okay. Now we're about to see like a whole Slack just go object. Great. We got it. So we're going to say animal should be set equal to Pascal case, the thing that we declared above. That's the API or the reference to it, PropTypes.shape. Because every time we want to check an object, we want to check its shape. Ooh, I got that wrong. So you give that an object. And now, what are the props on animal that we care about for this particular component? Name and species. Name is going to be PropTypes.string, and species is going to be PropTypes.string. Okay, what did we just do? What did we just solve? Let's go figure it out. What do we got in here? Well, we got a laundry list of strings. Open the console. Absolutely nothing. We don't really have anything going on. This is where the fun begins. We're going to go break it. And we're going to say right away our fat-tailed Dunart. Well, let's do this. Let's actually give it something that it can work with because that parsing error is scarier than a prop types error. JavaScript is like, dude, you got it wrong. Check it out. Our fat-tailed Dunart is now the number 1, although it shouldn't be. And what do we get in the console? We get a failed prop type. Now, our app continued on. It compiled, still printed the 1 that we wanted to give it, but it's saying it has an invalid prop of animal.name. Type number supplied to animal, expected string. So we get a little test right here. We get to test ourselves and say, oh, boom, you know, this thing actually should be something else. You gave it the wrong thing. You forehead is what the compiler just told me. At least that's how I understood it. So let's go back and be like, oh yeah, I know where that mistake was. Oh, whoops. I know what that syntax error was. And our beautiful warning is no longer in the console. All prop types are going to do is give you warnings. Prop types are going to protect you from yourself. Okay? Now there's one more cool thing that's built into React that I want you to take note of. And that is called default props. So I can actually invoke animal and the default props property. And I can say that if no string is given or something for animal, how would I do this with an object? Let's just say, yeah. Largest humanus. New type of human species. I don't know if you knew that. Translates literally to large human. There's a qualifier there. Okay, let's see if this worked. Never done this with an object before. But let's say that we forgot, or some of our data is corrupted that we're getting back, and we don't have, dang, I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll see. We just have an ID of 1 on that first one. Yeah, that didn't work. Let me build a more trivial example, because with objects it gets a little more complicated. So we don't want to default props that because whatever. And let's go back and fix our animal data. And let's just say that I wanted to, back in app, I wanted to create a component that was just me. And this is important, and you'll see why. Default props is sort of like a sidekick to prop types. The name is going to be empty string. Me. Gotta import it. Gotta create it. Mel.js. I am there. And that's going to be a div that is props.name. Got to define our props. Okay. So now, very bottom, let's do this above everything. Bear with me. It's going to be awesome in 1 minute. So me is an empty string. But we expected it to print something, right? Let's see what happened with React. Not Redux, we want to go React. Not security, React. There we go. What's going on here? Me is on the DOM somewhere, just an empty div. We just have a div floating around. That's not very useful. We got to give it our name. In this case, it's Ryan. Okay? But what happens if the user forgets to supply that name, or that data doesn't come back? Well, inside of me, we can default props that data. Set equal to an object and say that name is Ryan. Props.name. Maybe it's because I'm giving it an empty string. There we go. Notice that we forgot Ryan. We forgot the name. I think that was my problem earlier, but I'll have to do some debugging. Okay? So me is missing Ryan, is missing the name that we care about so much for that component to work. Well, let's call it you, and it'll be whatever it defaults to. If you forget that property, it'll be on there. So default props, once again, is the sidekick to prop types. And I wish I had like a better example that like coincided with everything, but I took a nosedive right into that, and I hope it worked out a little bit better for most of us. And if you look right here, you know, right in the documentation, you can find things for default props pretty easily. Declaring default props. Reading.default props, name is Mary. Look, they copied my example. I'm gonna have to talk to the React team. But no, default props is very important to understand that, like, if you want to make sure that some data is there so your app doesn't break, then you Yeah, you can use default props to do so. Cool. All right, that was a long demo that I did on my own. Let's take a 5-minute breather. Let's come back and we're going to do a demo together that walks us through prop types. Okay. And I'm going to deploy this little application. If you think it'll be helpful, I'm going to deploy it up to Code Sandbox. So during the break, I'll deploy it and get you a link up there. So go take 5. That's important that you take the breaks that we offer, get your brain reset, especially you all who do a lot of this at night. I commend you for your effort and your diligence. Little story about me, I got exposed to coding at an online, not an online, at an in-person after-hours boot camp. And it was only 12 weeks long, and I was terrible when I left, but I've gotten better since. Cool. Take your 5-minute breather, come back, and we'll get jamming.
Alrighty, we should all be settling back in. This is cool. This is cool stuff. I wish somebody taught me this stuff. I'm gonna learn it all on my own. Okay, here's a link. Click it. During break, Jason asked a good question. Jason asked, so typically, users aren't always very receptive to functional changes. Is it best to wait until you've implemented a few features before deploying a new version of an app or ask for user input? Like, what is the best way to approach that? Luckily, we work in agile teams, those small, small releases to the product. You get user usability testing and research and design done by your UX department. And they go out and they figure out what the users want. Or if you're Steve Jobs, you just tell the users what they want. That's his approach. So a lot of times developing software is let's build something, get it out in the users as soon as possible, get some feedback on it, pivot, iterate. What do our users want? You have a sales team that's typically in charge of figuring out what that is, or our UX team that's figuring out the user experience. What we're doing actually has little to do with the users that we work with, the end users. Has a lot more to do with the developer experience in building applications, okay? So as a developer, you're using prop types to build, your own, or to check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? You use prop types to stop yourself from making mistakes before they become mistakes. If that makes sense. So the user in this case is you, the developer, when using this tool. Because once you deploy your React application to production, React looks at all the prop types code and it strips it away from it. It pulls it off of the objects that you're giving to your bundle. And that just helps with like code bloat and things like that. So hopefully that clears up a couple of questions there. But what we have here is a drill. This is not a drill. This is a drill. We're going to go over prop types together. So much like our animal data, we've got a bunch of cities. And we're going to import those cities in, and we're going to use them inside of our components. We have a cities list, okay? And we have a single city component that we're going to build from scratch. And then inside of here, we're going to, this is where we're pulling them in, and cities list gets our state.cities. So we're going to live in here, and notice that we've included prop types for you. And this little thing called, it's a prop types array, and that array is required, okay? The is required flag is very important to understand. Well, it's important to know that it exists, I should say. If I go and I just say that no cities were given, and yeah, notice we're not doing anything iterating over these cities. So if I were to just not give this what we're giving it, let's go back to, so come over with me into index.js, and let's just give this an empty, let's give it a string, okay? Look at what happened in our console down here. Let's pop it open. Whoa, we got a warning. That's because it's saying the type string was supplied to cities list but expected array. What if we leave this off altogether? What the heck? Well, that's the is required flag. Okay, let me bump this up in font size. Feld prop type, the prop cities is marked as required in city list, but its value is undefined. Okay, so we failed this check. This type check failed, okay, just by leaving it off. So is required is a way for you to say, hey, this component is required to have at least an array called cities on it. okay, in order for that component to exist. Now, where this would come in handy is, what if cities list was a component that I gave to Ira, and Ira, I'm just picking on you because I see you right there. And I gave this file over to Ira, and I said, hey, look at the prop types and figure out how to use this component. He wouldn't even have to ask me what's required to get this thing off the ground. Just put it right on there. It's an array. It's an array of things. It's required right there. Okay? So that's a really, really important one, is the is required flag. Okay? So interestingly enough, this isn't just the best proper, this isn't fully typed or fully checked. Because if we go back to our docs, where'd our docs go? Your docs, so far away. So far away that I have to type it back into the browser. Okay. We have this array of function. And we're going to say it's going to be an array of objects. Okay? Which we can do by just saying object. We don't care about the shape at that point. We just care that it's an array of objects. So you can go ahead and add this with me. And then we're just going to say array of, and we're going to say that it's an array of, and it's a function. So we pass it another prop types value. So function. We're going to say prop types dot object. And we're going to say that that is required. Notice that the is required syntax goes on to the last thing, right? So even if it's a function, you chain the is required on to that last thing. And we are not even, for some reason, it's not refreshing that. But let's go and make sure we give this cities back as this.state.cities. Okay? Awesome. I'm assuming that there's no improper items because there's no console log. Okay? So now we're going to iterate over that list. And we're going to say props.cities.map. I'll take it pretty slow here. And we're going to say for each city, return me a city with the following data. The key being set to, let's double check what we need on that. ID works. Okay. City's not defined. I'll leave this up here right now while you catch up so I can answer Noah's question because it's a good one. So will we be type checking on every component that takes props, or is checking on a parent component adequate? That is completely up to you. In our case, Noah, we're going to make sure that we actually get an array of objects. And then where we care about those objects fields are going to be down on the child component. So we're going to check the shape of that object down there. That's what we're doing. It's a case-by-case basis. If you can check the shape of every single object that's on the city in the parent, you could potentially do that. I like to do it at the place that I need to print the data to the DOM, which in our case is going to be on a component called city, which we're going to go build. So inside of this code sandbox, we have a city file, and we need to build something with it. We're going to import, and unfortunately snippets doesn't work in code sandbox yet, but it gives me import. Import React from React. That's wrong. Lowercase React, please. And then we're going to say const city equals props returns div with the city information on it. What's the information we want to display here? Let's take a peek. Let's take a peek at the file. City, state, and then a bunch of zip codes. It's kind of fun. An ID. Okay. Everything's a string, except for an array of strings, and we do have IDs that are numbers. So we're going to do that. I'm going to force you to do it there. Okay? So I'm going to force you to do it again. Okay, so we're going to do we'll just do a bunch of divs. We'll get div soupy here. Should be more semantic. But I'm going to say that city props.city .name and then what were the others? Nope. Yep. Oh, city.city, state, and zips. Okay. State, city, and what we'll actually do is we'll put these in their own div. And then we'll say that. And then we have a bunch of, I don't know if I even care about those zips, but we'll do it. We just want to iterate again. Props.zips, zip, map for each zip, for each z, I'll just do that. Return me a div, and we'll just say whose key, because remember, it's unexpected, is set equal to the string z. We print out the zips as well. Z. Geez. Now we need to export it. Who built this tutorial? Just kidding, it was me. City. And inside of cities list, we need to define city by importing it. Cool. Sorry, I went fast there. I'll give you that. Is it props.city.zip? Yeah, thank you. Okay, cannot read property state of undefined. That's up in props.city. What did I call it? Oh, I got to give this city to city. Okay. Look at all these great errors. Regular braces in city. What line? Line 3. Oh, this is just like an implicit return. So that's pretty much the same syntax. Thank you. But yeah, this is like if I didn't want a body, a function body, I could just return the parentheses. Yeah. Okay, props.cities.state. What did I do here? What have I done here? City is where the error is happening. Cannot read property map of undefined. Usually tells me a little bit more. Props.city.zip.map. That's what, if I had just listened to Layla above, my life would have been easier. Or if I just had a bunch of prop types, right? So 10 points to the Hogwarts Schoolhouse of Choice for Layla. All right, so we built some cities. We got some data flowing around our application. Our goal now is to make sure that this data is checked properly. So we have two instances, two cases where this data can go wrong. We're good here. We're passing those checks. But we need to make sure that that we're doing right by React here, and we're giving city the right things. Oh, you know what? I should have forked this. Oh, brother. Oh, brother. Because now the next time students come back into this tutorial, I'm just going to go delete all this stuff. Yeah, I could just Control Z the whole thing. But I'll fix that. That's not your problem. That's my problem. Okay, so to finish up this exercise so that we can get, so I can get you started on your project this afternoon or this evening, we're going to just prop types this city object or the city function, which I call it an object because that's what it's going to become. But we're going to import what? What do we need to import? Thomas, you gotta read Harry Potter, especially over the holiday break, Thomas. I'm really into Sanderson right now. I just barely started the Stormlight series. I don't know if there's any fiction fantasy nerds out there. No, just read book 1 or 2. You could breeze through 2 over the break for sure. Okay, so how do I get prop types in here? What do I need to import? Yeah, that's Brandon Sanderson. Yes, Andrew. Okay, I will. It's a good tangent. Hey, Layla says we need to import prop type. Jamar says import prop types from prop types. Which one is it? Layla is rescinding her answer. Okay, we're going to go prop types from kebab case prop types. So this is saying I want the API from this package saved to this name. So the API meaning all of the things that are on prop types, like string, number, one of type, one of blah, blah, blah. Okay? So in our case, we're just now going to say that the city dot what? Which one is it now, Layla? Layla's first answer. Prop type. Okay. Prop type. I think it's prop types. I've got my head all messed up. It is prop types. Okay. Equals an object. So this is now referencing the React object, city, and saying, hey, prop types, this is going to be respected by React. Okay? And we're going to say that our city that we're using all over our thing has a particular shape. So we're going to say city, and it's going to be prop types, Pascal case, dot shape, and we're going to say that state, no, city, no, and zip are all something. So what is state? String. What is city? I'm giving you a forehead stamp, Jason. Yeah, string, but how do I type it out? What do I, like, what's missing? Prop types, that string. And lastly, zip. What is this? An array. They're string numbers, though, Sania. So they're string values. We could go and make these numbers, but nobody got time for that. We're gonna go prop types dot Ah, Jamar. Is it Hamar or Jamar? Believe me, there's a difference. The latter. Okay. Jamar. Okay, cool. In Portuguese, it would be Hamar Torres would be your name. Okay, so we're going to go PropTypes.array of, and this is going to be PropTypes.string. Awesome. Hey, it looks like we're not getting any problems in the console, so everything's good, right? Well, we actually have to break it to make sure that we did it right. Let's go change a couple of these. And you can just hit Control or Command D. If you're on Mac, it's Command. And you can just keep highlighting them all and delete. Oh, invalid number. That's bad. Why is that an invalid number? Okay, that's weird. That was really weird. A leading zero. You guys teaching me something about JavaScript that I don't know? You can't have a leading zero in a number? Is that like a React thing? Is that a JavaScript thing? Really? Wow. Okay, I've never run into that before. So yeah, in my limited 5+ years of experience, I've never had to worry about that. Cool. You guys are smarter than me. This is the last time Dan's going to get me to teach his class for him, I promise. Okay, so we're going to go back to our thing here. And look, at city.zip, index 0, the type number was supplied to city expected string. So it's safe to say that with our little limited test here, our types are in place. If we change this to the number 3, we're going to get a similar idea. And we saved ourselves from a lot of heartache later on. If the API that was giving us this data changed, we would have, failed the tests that we set up for ourselves. Okay. So I want you to reflect on this as you build tonight's project, start working on it. The day 1, which for you guys means part 1. So I know that's confusing, and I just haven't had time to go in and change it for part-time. But yeah, the part 1 you're going to be working on over the next couple of days. It requires that you use prop types to ensure that the data that you're passing around is checked properly. So make sure that your code sandbox, go ahead and refresh it if you were following along. If you haven't, because I've been saving these changes, and then fork it. So when I go back tonight and undo all these changes, you're good to roll. So make sure you do that so that you have this when you start your project tonight. But you're going to be starting your project in Create React app, and then you can reference this code sandbox. So I know we kind of context switched a little bit there from one environment to the other, but they're virtually the same thing. So here's what's cool about Code Sandbox. Code Sandbox is now running a version of VS Code in the browser. So get this. The creator of Code Sandbox had the audacity to take an application that was built in Node, or Electron, if you will. So we spent all this time trying to get out of the browser and into physical software apps. That's why Node exists, right? And he made that Node application go back into the browser. So he had the audacity to do that. And it's really cool. It's a stripped down version of VS Code. The Code Sandbox, as you see today, is actually a VS Code instance running live in browser, which is pretty freaking awesome. I think, at least. So maybe you're not that nerdy about it, but I am. Okay, so let's go into our project so I can set you free into the wild with this wonderful opportunity to build an Instagram clone. Let's go to GitHub. Okay, so on the GitHubs, you're going to find access to the Instagram clone at this URL that I'm going to give you in Slack. And day one is really the first README that you'll get to. So you'll see there's 4 parts to this. You're kind of spreading these out over the next couple of weeks, days, or however Dan will give you more information on that to come. But the first part of the Instagram clone is focusing on create React app, prop types, and default props. So you're going to follow the instructions here. You're going to set up, using create React app, whichever way you want. But notice that you need to make sure that you CD into the actual app after you fork it and clone it. And then you'll install your create React app in here. Okay? So you're going to make sure that you fork and clone, and then run create React app inside your copy of this fork. Okay? So that's very important that you do that. And you're gonna call the project, you're gonna CD into it, say create React app, however you need to use it, and then call it Instagram. Okay? These instructions are laid out. I'm just making sure you go over all this. There are assets. This is what you're building. You're building this big header that eventually will have some search functionality. You're building a card for each Instagram post. There's 4 posts that you're going to be passing around, and then you're going to be building the comments for each post. So you're given this giant data set. It's a little bit more sophisticated than what you're used to, that our newlywed Sean Chen put together like over a year and a half ago, which is awesome. This project stands the test of time. That's what's so cool about it. Like Sean and I built this a long time ago. It's still there, and I freaking love it. The only thing that's different is we had to add new URLs. Anyway, so you'll grab this data. Look at this, an array of objects, and you're going to type check it. All this data associates with the clone that you're building. Okay? Here's some interesting stuff about each post. Each post has an array of comments. If I were you, I would take that array of comments and set them on their own state in a comment section somewhere. Okay? The reason I would do that is because you're going to be adding comments to posts as if you're a user, and you don't want to go all the way. This is where Jason's why is unidirectional data flow good? Well, this is where it's bad. You don't want to have to go from app down to post, down to comment section, down to comment, and then all the way back up the chain, and then manipulate that array up there on the parent, if that makes sense. Take that comments array and put it down on a comment section component. There is a place for you to learn how to do that. Okay. There's an instruction for you inside the README for the project. But this is the dummy data that you're going to be working with that gives you everything you need to build out your application. And the instructions are all there. So the day one tasks, there are 3 major container components that you'll need to implement for this project. Search bar, post container, and the comment section. Okay. At the end of day 1, there will be a single instance of the search bar being rendered at the top of the page. So at the end of day 1, this is at the end of the next couple days, whenever Dan tells you that you should start working on day 2. Okay? The next time you learn something new is essentially when you're done with day 1. The root app component of your application should import the dummy data from dummydata.js file with import dummy data from dummy data, and iterate over said data, passing each individual object as a prop to an instance of post container. Each post container component will then pass the array of comments on each post object as a prop to the instance of comment section. The comment section component will receive the array of comments as props and render a comment component with the username of the poster as well as the text. Additionally, there should be an input box that allows users to submit a new comment for any post. We will work on posting new comments later, not tomorrow, later. Be sure to check the types, this is your task, of the data you are passing around as props in the components that will be using the props to present data as DOM elements. This should be linked to your comment component that comment section will render, and potentially to your post component that post container will render. You're free to leverage Bootstrap for the project if you care to learn it and use it. I would recommend the React Strap library if you care to learn it as well. That's up to you. That's something that's completely optional. You can use it, or you can use your awesome, UI skills to build it your own way. In addition to Bootstrap for theming, you'll want to add your own styles via CSS to keep things organized. Have the CSS file that corresponds with the component live in the same directory as the component file. So those are just some, some style choices there. But that's a lot to do between today and tomorrow. You got your hands full for sure. But it's fun. This is one of the best. Like I said, it stands the test of time. Questions as you jump right into it? Can you substitute, say, instance Bulma instead of Bootstrap? I don't know anything about Bulma. I'm going to say yes if you want to use another component library or something. The idea is you're going to build an application that looks like this, provides functionality to a search bar that allows you to search posts, provides comment functionality, which is just a to-do list, by the way. Comment functionality there. Cool. By your lack of questions, I'm going to assume that you are ready for me to stop yapping and let you jump right in. Thank you so much for having me. If there's anything you need, please let me know. It's been a pleasure. Muito obrigado, meu. Eu não sabia que tive brasileiro aqui. Boa noite, amigão. Yeah, I speak Portuguese, so ask me about that later. If you speak Portuguese too, you can DM me and we'll chat about it. Thank you so much. Obrigadão, amigos.